Is strength training safe after 60? Can you do it at home? And what exercises should you choose? I'm Chris, a physiotherapist specializing in strength training for adults over 50 who thought they weren't gym people. And today I'm answering your most common questions, from safety and equipment to exercises and results. Whether you have arthritis, you're postmenopausal, or you're just a complete beginner feeling overwhelmed with no idea of where to start, you'll get practical clinical advice you can use today. So let's get straight in with the first question. Is strength training safe for seniors over 60? The short answer is yes, but we do have to recognize that there are risks associated with some of the more advanced strength training exercises that involve lifting weights. However, we can mitigate for these and we can make sure we approach it all very safely. Now, the real danger isn't strength training. It is not doing anything that tries to build muscle strength. Because if you're not trying to build muscle strength, you are losing muscle strength, a process called sarcopenia. Loss of muscle strength has been associated with respiratory disease, cardiac disease, dementia, diabetes. If we're losing muscle strength, we're probably losing some bone density, so a process of osteoporosis. And if we couple that together with the fact that reduced muscle strength has been shown to increase the risk of falls, with lower bone density, we increase the chance of fractures. So again, the real risk is not doing muscle strengthening. We can mitigate the risks of lifting weights and doing strengthening based exercises by making sure we start very slowly, and it's a very slow progressive start as we get older, recognizing that our body is not going to react in the same way as if we're 20 or 30. What are the benefits of strength training after 60? Strength training after 60 isn't just about building muscle to avoid health-related conditions mentioned in question 1. It's about maintaining your independence, your confidence, and your ability to do the things you love. So let me break down the key benefits. First, there's functional independence. So this is the big one. I'm talking about the everyday activities that matter. Carrying and shopping, climbing stairs without putting on the banister, getting up from a chair without using your hands, getting up from the floor even without using your hands. All these are activities that don't sound much for someone who takes them for granted, but for someone who can't currently do them, it's a massive achievement when they finally build up enough muscle strength to do them again. Second is bone density. So this is crucial, especially for women who are postmenopausal. Strength training is one of the most effective ways to combat osteoporosis because it involves weight bearing with load and impact. Two of the things which the Royal Osteoporosis Society recommend that anyone with osteoporosis needs to be doing, not avoiding because they're scared of it. So it's not just about preventing fractures, it's about building a stronger skeletal system that supports you as you age. Then there's pain reduction. I've worked with many people who've reported less pain after having started strength training. Because when you strengthen the muscles that support your joints, arthritic and tendon related pains that you might have often reduce as a result. And then there's better sleep. So as many older adults who I've worked with, particularly postmenopausal women who struggle with fatigue, have said that after starting strength training, the quality of their sleep has significantly improved. All of this together helps build confidence. So it's not just about building confidence in the gym and performing the exercises. It's the confidence to be able to live an active life again and resume the sports and hobbies that you might have given up on already. You can have the confidence to get back to these, knowing the strength training has helped you create a robust, resilient body that's going to deal with the demands that all this throws at your body. And then there's longevity. So strength training is linked to reduced mortality risk. It helps your metabolic health, helps manage conditions like type 2 diabetes, and boosts your overall longevity. So you're not just adding years to your life, you're adding life to your years. So when people ask me, what are the benefits? It's not just one thing. It's your entire quality of life. Staying independent, feeling confident, and knowing your body is getting stronger, not weaker. Can I strength train at home without a gym membership? Absolutely, yes. Home workouts are not only possible, they're highly effective, and especially when you're just starting out. You don't need a gym membership to build strength. I realize gyms can be quite daunting and overwhelming for someone who's not familiar with them. So absolutely, we can get started at home. Body weight is often enough to start. So when you're in those very beginning stages of strength training, body weight exercises are going to build your foundation. They're going to help you build the routine of just turning up and doing something. So we're talking about things like squats or lunges or push-ups, whether they're against a wall, or you can do those on your knees on the floor, or eventually to a full push-up. These movements teach your body the fundamental movement patterns that you need to progress within strength training. You also don't need much space. About 6 by 6 foot of clear space is plenty, and that's smaller than most people think. So you've often got enough space in your living room, bedroom. If the weather's nice, you can get outside in the garden, but small space workouts are absolutely doable. Now, there are advantages to going to a gym. You get a lot more variety of equipment. There'll be staff on site usually that you can get advice from if you want to look at form, etc. There's some social aspect to it. You might see the same people turning up each week and get to know what they're doing and create almost a bit of like accountability. But initially, those things are not necessary. Don't let the lack of a gym membership be the thing or the barrier that stops you from getting stronger. So yes, you can absolutely strength train at home. And that leads us on to the next obvious question. What equipment do I need as a beginner to start strength training? The beauty of starting strength training is you need almost nothing to begin. As mentioned before, body weight is enough for most people in the very early stages. And then we can use things that we might already have at home. So in the lockdown, I used bottles of water in a rucksack. We know that a litre of water is a kilogram of weight. And what I found really nice was the bottles of Screen Wash, 5 litre bottles of Screen Wash with a handle. That's 5 kilograms. I could fit 2 of those in a rucksack and hold 2 more. And suddenly that's 20 kilograms of weight I've got already. So you can be creative. You can use things that already have weight around the house, put them in a bag, and you've got the additional resistance you might need to start building strength. As you progress, you'll then probably want to start to consider purchasing some very basic home gym equipment. As a good starting point, a set of resistance bands that you can get for as little as 10 to 15 pounds can provide you resistance in a whole range of those movement patterns. The next step is you probably want to get a pair of adjustable dumbbells. So these are the dumbbells that have a bar that you can slide the small weight plates on and off and then put a clip on the end to stop them falling off. And you can set those to as little as about 2 kilograms, and they might go up to 10 kilograms each. On Amazon, you can find a pair of adjustable dumbbells that goes up to 20 kilograms for under £50. With a set of resistance bands and a pair of adjustable dumbbells, you've now got what you need to do an effective home workout that is going to build strength. And here's what you don't need as a beginner. You don't need expensive machines, benches, barbells, cable systems. You don't need that at home. You can keep it simple and you can build really good strength with minimal equipment as long as you're doing it to the right intensity. And again, we'll talk about that in the questions to come. So at home, you can start with body weight, add some simple resistance in when you're ready. That could be household items, bands, dumbbells, and resist the urge to buy lots of equipment you won't use. Simple is better when you're at the beginning. How many days a week should I strength train? I suggest for beginners 2 to 3 days per week. And this isn't just my opinion, it's backed by the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines. So they recommend at least 2 sessions per week for adults aged between 18 and 65, and actually 3 sessions per week of muscle strengthening for over 65s. Now, if you're starting from 0 workouts per week, I don't recommend going straight in at 3 per week. Not because I think it's dangerous in any way. I think you'll find it harder to stay consistent jumping from 0 to 3. Once you've built up the routine of turning up twice per week, it will be much easier to add the 3rd workout in. And here's how I recommend structuring it. You're going to do full body workouts each session. That means you're hitting all your major muscle groups: legs, chest, back, shoulders, core, at least twice per week. You don't need complicated split routines where you work chest one day, legs another. That's for people who are more advanced at going to the gym 5-6 days a week. For the moment, full body 2 to 3 per week is absolutely fine. As we're doing full body, we do want to make sure that you're not doing your workouts on consecutive days. Your muscles need rest between sessions to recover and grow. So for example, Monday and Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday and Sunday if you're doing 3 per week. Just don't train 2 days in a row when you're just starting out. You'll end up exhausted, potentially overworking your muscles and then potential injuries. Your body needs that recovery time. And here's something I really want to emphasize: consistency over intensity. 2 days per week, every single week for 12 weeks will give you far better results than trying to do 4 days a week and burning out after 3 weeks and quitting, which is something I see all the time. People think more is better. It's not. Sustainable consistency is much better. So follow the World Health Organization's guidelines, 2 to 3 days per week, full body each session, non-consecutive days. It's evidence-based, it's manageable, and most importantly, it's sustainable long-term. How long should my strength training workouts be? Whilst there's no specific recommendation, in my opinion, your workout should be 20 to 30 minutes as a beginner. That's it. It's not an hour, it's not 90 minutes. It's quality over quantity. You want focused sessions that you can actually sustain week after week. Here's how that might break down. So it could be 5 minutes for your warm-up, and we'll talk more about that in our next question. Then 15 to 20 minutes of actual strength work, and then finally 5 minutes of cool down and stretching. That structure will keep you safe, get results, and doesn't overwhelm your schedule. This is your basic workout duration as a beginner. In those 15 to 20 minutes of strength work, you're doing about 4 to 5 exercises, with each exercise getting 2 to 3 sets of somewhere between 5 and 15 repetitions. And that is your workout structure. It might not sound like much, but when you're actually doing it with good form and appropriate weight, it's plenty. I'd rather you focus on doing fewer exercises really well than trying to fit in 12 exercises in one workout and not really doing any of them well enough. Between sets, you're resting for 60 to 90 seconds. And if you need longer as a beginner, take it. There's no prize for rushing through your workout. Rest is when your muscles prepare for the next set. Don't skip it. If you could go straight into the next set without stopping, you weren't using an appropriate weight for the first set. So aim for 20 to 30 minutes total, 5 minutes warm up, 15 to 20 minutes of strength work, 5 minute cool down. And that's just your sustainable workout length. There is no one perfect routine to suggest, but your warm-up is important. Don't skip the warm-up and jump straight into the heavy weights. I see it all the time. People think they're saving time by skipping the warm-up. You're not saving time. You're risking injury. The warm-up should take roughly 5 minutes. Generally, you want to consider some dynamic movements. So dynamic moves, you're moving while you warm up. So you think arm circles, leg swings, trunk rotations, marching on the spot. These movements get your heart rate up and wake up your muscles ready for the workout they're about to do. I like to include some joint mobility work, so moving your joints, so your shoulders, spine, hips, knees, etc., through their natural range of motion. This is especially important if you have arthritis or specific joint stiffnesses. Then we want to do some movement-specific preparation. So the best warm-up you can do ahead of a movement pattern is to do the same movement pattern with less resistance. This means if you're about to do some weighted squats in your workout, do some bodyweight squats as part of your warm-up. And then you might actually want to do a set of squats with half the weight you would normally use. You're rehearsing the movement pattern your body is about to do. So it's like a practice run that tells your nervous system and your body what it's going to do with weights. So never skip your warm-up. Dynamic movements, joint mobility, movement-specific prep. We're trying to reduce your risk of injury as you progress and start to use heavier weights. What are the best strength training exercises for beginners over 60? The best exercises for beginners are what I call functional movement patterns that directly relate to your daily life. These are the exercises that help you do the things that actually matter to you. With my students, I work with 7 functional movement patterns. They are squats, hip hinges, lunges, push, pull, trunk rotations, and gait or carry. Now, I don't throw all of these at you straight away. I typically start with squats, hip hinge, push, and pull. So these cover the majority of what you need in daily life. Squats help you get up from chairs, get on and off the toilet, get in and out of the car. Hip hinges, which include deadlifts, they help you pick up items from the floor safely, whether that's your grandchild, shopping bags, laundry basket. Push movements help you open heavy doors, get you up from the floor, or put your bag in the overhead locker on a plane. Pulling movements help you carry shopping, pull open doors, or even climb a ladder. Here's what's really important. Before we add any weight, I want to make sure you're confident with these movement patterns. For some people who've done strength training before, they move through this stage quickly. But for others who have never done what they call formal exercise, the thought of doing 10 to 15 bodyweight squats in a row can be really daunting. Let me give you some specific exercises for each pattern. For squats, you might start with chair squats, so basically sitting down and standing up from a chair. That's it. Master that. Then you can progress to bodyweight squats without the chair, and then we can add some weight. For hip hinges, we might start with a very basic exercise like the bridge. So you lay on the floor with your knees bent to 90 degrees, push your heels to lift your bum up in the air and back down again. We are hinging at the hip and extending at the hip. Then we might start with something like a Romanian deadlift, and you might just use a broom handle or a mop, and you're not really doing any weight, you're just getting used to the technique. And then eventually we can progress this to a deadlift. For push-based exercises, we could start with wall push-ups first, then do it on the kitchen counter, and then eventually go down to the floor and start doing it for our knees till eventually a full push-up. Or we could start to do shoulder press or chest press with light weights and then gradually build the weight. For the pull-based exercise, something like a resistance band row is a brilliant way to start. Or if you're using dumbbells, we could do a bent over row, or you could even do a single arm one where you're putting your other arm on a chair for support. The reason I focus on these functional movement patterns rather than isolated exercises that only really work one muscle at a time is because they transfer directly into your life, as discussed before. But also for that reason I just mentioned there is they work multiple muscles at the same time in order to produce that movement pattern, as opposed to just working one muscle at a time. So therefore we can be so much more efficient with your time in the gym. How much weight should I start with and when should I increase it? As a general rule, if we are trying to build strength, then we want to pick a weight or resistance where the last couple of repetitions of the set we're doing, of the exercise we're performing, is challenging but doable with good form. And if I asked you how many more do you think you could have done, then you wouldn't really have been able to do any more, or maybe one or two at a push. So let me explain the progression I would use with my students to get them to this stage. First, I want you to feel confident with the movement patterns with little to no weight. Once you have practiced doing those exercises and you feel happy with them, then we do want to introduce some load. That might be in the form of a weight with a resistance band. In the gym, it might be with a cable machine. There's lots of different options. But for a lot of you, doing an exercise holding a weight might feel very daunting or overwhelming. So I'd rather get used to doing the exercises with a little bit of weight first before we really increase a weight to try and push to fatigue or train to fatigue. Once you're comfortable doing the exercise with a weight, we then want to start to increase the weight we're using so that the last repetition that we do starts to feel a lot more challenging. And we're trying to get close to that training to fatigue or training to failure point. So I use a term, reps in reserve, and I ask people, how many more repetitions do you think you could have done after they finished? Again, if the answer is 0, 1 or 2, fantastic. You have got very close to training to fatigue or failure. You are building strength as a result. If you could have honestly said, I could have done 5 or 6 more straight away without having stopped, then whilst no exercise is a waste of time, every exercise has some benefit. If you're not anywhere near that fatigue or failure point, we're not going to be getting stronger as a result. And for most of us, the goal is trying to build strength. So therefore, on the next set, we would want to use a little bit more weight. Now, I start most of my students at about 15 repetitions at the point we're trying to reach muscular fatigue. Because if you reach fatigue at 15 repetitions, you need a lot less weight than if you're aiming for, say, 5 repetitions. And 15 repetitions is great for building some strength, but it's mainly muscular endurance. If it was anything more than 15 repetitions, you're not really building any strength at all. So 15 repetitions at the fatigue or failure point is the first stage where you really build any kind of strength. And then what we really want to do is to increase the weight further so the fatigue point starts to move down. So it takes less repetitions until we get to the point where we can't do another one. If you can get yourself to the point of fatigue within 5 repetitions, you build a significant amount of strength and you can do it much earlier and therefore be a lot more efficient with your use of time in the gym. However, you are going to have to use significantly more weight or do the exercises against a lot more resistance in order to be able to get that fatigue point to happen at 5 repetitions as opposed to it happen at 15 repetitions. And if we jump up that weight too quickly, there's where the risk of injury could happen. So as a minimum, I would suggest that we want to get from 15 down to 5 repetitions over around 12 weeks. For a lot of you, that may be even longer. Any less than that, we increase that risk of injury. Can I strength train with joint pain, arthritis, or osteoporosis? Yes, and it's often recommended. Strength training, when done correctly, actually helps manage these conditions. I see this in my clinic constantly. People come in worried that strength training will make their arthritis or joint pain worse, and I have to explain the opposite is true. Not training is what makes it worse. For osteoporosis, strength training is crucial because weight-bearing exercises actually increase bone density. The Royal Osteoporosis Society, THEROS, state that people with osteoporosis should be doing exercises that involve weight-bearing with load and impact, both of which are incorporated within strength training. We know that loading bones stimulates them to become stronger. Depending on the specific site of the osteoporosis, there might be certain movements and exercises that might need to be adapted or modified. So if you do have osteoporosis and you are new to strength training, I would recommend seeing a physiotherapist prior to starting. If you have arthritis, strength training is one of the best things you can do. Strengthening the muscles around your joints provides better support and stability, which reduces the loads on the joints itself. The muscles effectively shield the joints from excessive loads. Particularly with arthritis, tendon pains, muscle pains, etc., we often have to push out of your comfort zone slightly to bring about a positive adaptation and build tolerance. There's an important distinction. You need to understand pain versus discomfort. So grimacing levels of pain that get worse during the exercise, or pain that lingers for a long time after finishing, that's a sign you probably need to back off and adapt the exercise. Lower level discomfort that settles quickly once finishing, or kind of generic muscle burn or muscle fatigue feelings, are fine to work into. And by doing so, you usually build a tolerance to that type of exercise over time, creating a more robust, resilient body. If pain is the issue, then we don't want to avoid the exercise or movement pattern completely, because that allows the area to decondition and it compounds the issue. We need to modify the exercise. The modifications you can make are endless. We can reduce the range of motion. We might use resistance bands instead of weights. We might try seated variations instead of standing ones. I learned when I worked with the British Disabled Ski and Snowboard team, Para Snow Sport GB, that there's always a way to adapt an exercise around a limitation. One important note though, if you have any undiagnosed or uncontrolled medical conditions, you must speak to your GP or specialist before starting any new exercise regime, particularly strength training. What mistakes do beginners make when starting strength training? I see the same mistakes over and over again in my clinic, and they're all preventable. The biggest one is doing too much too soon. People get excited about strength training and they try and do everything all at once. They increase their weight too quickly, they train too many days per week, and they don't give their body time to recover and adapt. I see this especially with people who were active 20 years ago. They remember what they used to lift, what they used to be capable of, and they try to jump straight back in at that level. Your body isn't the same body as it was 20 years ago, and that's okay. But you do need to make yourself where you are now, not where you were 2 decades ago. So start conservatively, build gradually, and you'll get strong again. But if you try and skip ahead, you'll just end up injured or burnt out. Mistake number 2, people try to do too many workouts each week. People decide they're going to start completely from fresh and they're going to jump in at 5 or 6 days a week right from the start. And within 2 or 3 weeks, they're exhausted, overwhelmed, and they just quit. 2 to 3 days per week is sustainable. You can maintain that for months and years. 5 days a week when you're just starting, for most people, that's not sustainable. And consistency beats intensity every single time. I'd rather you do 2 days a week for the next year than 5 days a week for 3 weeks before giving up. Build the habit first, and you can always add more later if you need to. Mistake number 3 is not having a plan. And I mean 2 types of plans here. So first is not having a plan for each individual session. People turn up to the gym or the home workout space and think, what should I do today? And they end up doing a random mix of exercises without much thought to the weight they're using or the number of reps or sets. And there's no real progression happening. Second is they're not having a plan for the next few months ahead. Strength training requires progressive overload, gradually increasing the challenge over time. If you don't have a roadmap for where you're going, how are you supposed to know when to increase the weight, when to change exercises, and when to progress? You need both. Plan for each session and then a bigger picture plan for how you're going to increase the weight and the challenge over the next 8 to 12 weeks. Then there's mistake number 4, staying too safe. So this is the opposite of doing too much too soon, but it's just as common. People find a weight that feels comfortable, or it may well have been challenging initially, but it has become more comfortable, and they stick with it for months. They never increase it because it doesn't feel too easy yet, but it's also just not challenging enough to build strength. Remember what I said earlier, those last few reps leading up to fatigue are where we build the strength. So if you're using a weight that's comfortable and you could finish your set and you could quite easily do another 10 more, you're not building strength. You're just maintaining at best. To build strength and continue to build strength, we need to continue to progressively challenge yourself. That means when a weight becomes manageable, it's time to increase it. Don't stay in your comfort zone forever. How important is rest between strength training workouts? Rest is absolutely critical. In fact, it's during rest and recovery that you actually get stronger, not the workouts itself. Your workout is a stimulus, but the adaptation happens when you're resting. So let me explain why this matters so much. You really need a minimum of 48 hours between training the same muscle groups in the same way. So if you do a full body workout on Monday, you shouldn't do another full body workout again until at least Wednesday at the earliest. The Tuesday then is your rest day between workouts, and it's a non-negotiable for beginners. Your muscle fibers need time to repair the microscopic damage from your workout. That repair process is what makes them stronger, and if you don't give them that time, they can't adapt. Now, rest doesn't mean sitting on the sofa all day, though sometimes that might be exactly what you need. We're talking about active recovery. So active recovery can be really beneficial. So note earlier I said we don't want to train the same muscle groups in the same way on the next day, but we can do other things. We can do light walking, gentle stretches, maybe some yoga, Pilates, tennis, golf. We're able to do something else, and we're using the muscles in a different way and not to the same intensity. So the thing we don't want to do is train them in the gym, pushing them to fatigue again. But other things are absolutely fine to do, and they're going to be great for our body in other ways. They're going to help us meet the number of minutes of physical activity that the World Health Organization recommend we do. So that's 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. You do need to watch for signs of overtraining though. So persistent fatigue that doesn't go away with a rest day, decreased performance, so weights that felt manageable last week suddenly feel impossible, increased injuries or niggles that just won't go away and becoming more frequent, trouble sleeping despite being exhausted. These are all signs that you probably need more rest. Your body is telling you it can't keep up with the demands you're placing on it. Here's how I want you to think about this. Recovery isn't separate from your training. It is part of your training. Your program isn't just the days you lift weights, it's the whole week, including your rest days. Those rest days earn the same respect as your training days because they're where you're actually building the strength. How long before I see results from strength training? This is a question everyone wants answered, and I'm going to give you some realistic timelines based on what I see in my clinic. The good news is you'll notice changes much sooner than you think, but different types of results happen at different times. The first results you'll see are kind of the neurological gains, and these happen as early as 2 to 4 weeks. You feel stronger, movements that felt awkward will start to feel easier, and you'll notice you can lift more weight quite quickly. This isn't muscle growth yet, it's your nervous system getting better at recruiting muscle fibers. Your brain is learning to communicate with your muscles more efficiently. These strength gains are real and they're motivating, even though you can't see them in the mirror yet. Around this time at 4 to 6 weeks, you'll start to notice functional improvements in your daily life. Stairs might feel easier. You might be able to carry your shopping without the struggle. Getting up from a chair doesn't require the same effort. This is often what people tell me they notice first. It's not how they look, but how they feel and what they can do and how their confidence is already growing. Visible muscle changes might take a lot longer. They can take up to 12 weeks to get any physiological changes within the muscle. So this is when you might notice improved muscle tone when you look in the mirror. Your clothes might fit differently. Other people commenting on how you look stronger. Your muscles are actually growing now. This is muscle growth, not just a neurological adaptation that happened earlier. Lastly, there's a bone density changes. So these take the longest, and we're talking kind of 6 to 12 months of consistent training. These are often measured via DEXA scans, so you won't feel them happening. But if you have osteoporosis or you're at risk for it, this is a long-term benefit that makes strength training so important. Your bones are responding to the load you're placing on them by becoming denser and stronger. And there's an important thing I do want you to remember. In the early stages where we got those neurological changes, you'll see progress very quickly, and that will be really inspiring, really motivating. But once your body has learned to use your muscles in the most efficient way, and you have to wait for those physiological changes, the progress you see slows right down, and you hit what we call the plateau. This can be really demoralizing, and a lot of people give up at this point. So stick with the plan of turning up consistently, gradually increasing your weights, and the changes are still happening, but they will take a little bit longer. As an older adult, what should I eat to support my strength training? This is a great question, and nutrition is absolutely crucial for supporting your strength training. I'm a physiotherapist and not a nutritionist, and I like to stay within my scope of practice. So whilst I have some knowledge about nutrition, I want to make sure you're getting the best, most evidence-based information from someone who actually specializes in the area. So luckily I have episode 3 of the Never Too Old to Lift podcast, where I interviewed Katrina Courtney on exactly this topic. So it's midlife nutrition, eating for strength and vitality. So Katrina is a sports and exercise nutritionist who specializes in working with older adults who want to remain active for as long as possible. We covered everything from protein intake and timing of meals, supplements like creatine and collagen, and how to fuel your workouts properly. So to give you a few highlights from that conversation, we talked about protein. So how much you need as an older adult, which is about 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight daily. So that's roughly 100 grams for a 70 kilogram person. The quality of protein matters, particularly something called leucine, which triggers muscle building in your body. We also discussed timing. And the good news is that the timing window is much bigger than people think. It's not this strict 30-minute window. You've got 24 to 48 hours where your body is using that nutrition to recover and build strength. Katrina also explained why carbohydrates aren't the enemy. They're actually essential for fueling your workouts and recovery. And we covered supplements like creatine, which has really solid research behind it for older adults doing strength training. Rather than me trying to summarize an hour-long conversation into just a few minutes, I really recommend that you watch or listen to that full episode. So once again, it's episode 3 of the Never Too Old to Lift podcast. And you can find that link in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or in the show notes page if you're listening to this on a podcast player. That wraps up the most common questions I get asked. If you do have any questions that I haven't answered or any follow-up questions about any of the topics I've covered, please do leave a comment below. Or if you're listening to this on audio, you can pop over to YouTube and ask your question there, or you can send me an email. It's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. But for now, I will see you in the next episode.